After the Jewish people left Egypt and they crossed the Red Sea, Amalek came and fought with the Jewish people. The Medrash says that Amalek came to take revenge. Amalek comes from Esav. They are descendants of Esav, and they came to take revenge for their grandfather Esav, who they felt lost the brachos to his brother Yaakov. And now, generations later, they come and they meet the Israelites as the Bnei Yisrael come out of the Sea of Reeds, and they're on the path to receive the Torah from Sinai. Comes Amalek, and Amalek fights with the Jewish people. Our rabbis tell us that Israel at that time was like a hot bath, that no nation wanted to come in contact with Israel. They were so powerful, they were untouchable. And now Amalek came to dampen that power. And therefore they fought with Yisrael, they fought with the Jewish people. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells Joshua that he should be the one fighting the war, being that Joshua is a descendant of Joseph, and Joseph was the main son of Yaakov, and therefore Joseph has the power to overcome Esav, and so too Joshua will have the power to overcome Amalek. And after the war, and after Amalek is defeated, the Torah tells us a very powerful passage. In the final passage of this week's Parsha of Beshalach, chapter number 17, verse number 16, it says there, Vayomer ki yad al keis yud kei milchama la Hashem ba'amalek b'dardar. It says Moses built an altar, and he called the altar Hashem Nisi. And then he went on to say that the hand of God is upon the throne of God, for God has waged war against Amalek from generation to generation. Rashi tells us that the word case is really kisei, the chair, the throne of God, but it's missing the letter Aleph. And Yud Kei is the name of God, but it's missing the last two letters of the Vav and the Hey. Says Rashi, to teach us that God's throne is incomplete and God's name is incomplete until Amalek is totally destroyed. Who is this Amalek? Why are we so paranoid that he's attacking the Jewish people? Why is there a war in every generation against Amalek? The Rambam says that there's a mitzvah in every generation to destroy Amalek. And yet we know today, we don't know who Amalek is, because after the Assyrian king mixed up all of the nations, we no longer have the nation of Amalek. So what does it mean there's a mitzvah to destroy Amalek in every generation? Our rabbis tell us that Amalek is very smart. They come to the Jewish people and they say, look, you know, you are descendants of Jacob, and we are descendants of Esav. And both Esav and both Jacob had a father by the name of Yitzchak, Isaac. And Isaac taught Torah to both Jacob, Yaakov, and to Esav. So we, Amalek, who are descendants of Esav, we know the Torah also. And we know the commandments of the Torah. And we're telling you, you guys have to chill out. We're telling you, you got to cool down. Don't take Torah literally. There are 613 commandments. Do you think God really wants you to do all 613 commandments? Don't be such a fanatic. Don't be so religious. You know, celebrate the holidays. You know, kosher style is good enough. But why, you know, follow every detail of the law? It's a new generation, the 21st century. There's computers, there's iPhones, there's airplanes. It's a whole different world today. Stop living in the archaic era. Start living with modern times. The word Amalek means to sever the head from the heart. And this is really what Amalek wanted to do. God says that I cannot rest till Amalek is destroyed, that my name is incomplete. Right now, as long as Amalek lives, I only have the Yud and the Hey. But the Vav and the Hey are missing. What is the meaning of the Yud of God's name? And what is the meaning of the Hey of God's name? And what is the meaning of the Vav of God's name? And what is the meaning of the final Hey of God's name? Our rabbis tell us that the Yud, a very small letter, represents the concept of Chachma. Chachma means an idea. When you have a question and you try to find an answer, and all of a sudden, in your brain, a bulb goes on, you have a lightning bolt, an idea, that is called Chachma. It's an undeveloped idea, but you know you have an answer. It's a concept. It's like the seminal drop. It's a little dot, the letter Yud. Then you have the letter Hey. The letter Hey is expansive. It has height, it has width, it has depth. This represents the concept of Bina, understanding. When you take this idea and now you expound on it and you develop it. That is the Yud and the Hey. The Vav has the gematria of 6. This alludes to the 6 emotions of the heart. It also alludes to the study of Torah. And then we have the final Hey, which alludes to the concept of speech and action and the performance of physical mitzvos, of good deeds. So now we can understand what Amalek stands for and what Amalek did. Amalek came along and said, Umalak, I'm going to sever the head from the heart. Amalek tells the Jew it's okay if you have a profound grasp of godliness, if you meditate on the unity of God. All these things are wonderful. But you know what? Don't bring it down into emotion. Don't get excited about it. Don't bring it down into action and act upon it. Just keep it in your brain. Keep it under your hat. Sweep it under the carpet. Keep it quiet. Don't make a big fuss over it. Only do it on an intellectual level. That's Amalek. Umalak, to sever the head from the heart. And therefore, Amalek says, don't sit down and actually study the Torah. And don't go and actually fulfill the mitzvahs. That's all archaic. Intellect, that's fine. But to actually verbalize and study Torah and speak about the Torah, v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veisecha, as it says in the Shema, to speak about the Torah, when you're sitting in your house, when you go on your way, when you lie down and when you get up, nah, that's not important. And to actually do the mitzvah of lighting the Shabbos candles, or to put the money into the pushka for tzedakah, or to put on tefillin, that is all irrelevant. That is Amalek. And Amalek, says the Torah, shekorcha baderech. What do? They cut you off on the road. Says Chassidus, the word korcha is krirus, coldness. They brought a coldness into Yiddishkeit. My grandfather, Rabbi Jacob Zehechtel, blessed memory, told the story that once the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov saw how a group of monks were carrying a frozen cross. And he explained that one of the ways that the church would make the holy water was they would cut out a cross in a frozen lake, and they would bring it back to the monastery or the church, and they would melt it, and that would become holy water. So the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov are walking in the street, and they see these group of monks carrying a frozen cross. They came back, and they asked the Rebbe, what does it mean? Everything we see and we hear, we have to learn a path in our service to God. So what kind of path can we derive from seeing a cross, a frozen cross? And their teacher told them as follows. Sometimes a Jew does a mitzvah. He does a good deed. He lights the Shabbos candles, and he puts on the tefillin, and puts on the tzitzis, and makes a blessing before he eats, and he puts on the tefillin in the morning. However, when they do the mitzvah in a cold manner. They lack warmth. They lack fervor. They lack excitement. So you know what, said their teacher, that what happens is eventually this cold mitzvah not only turns into a cross, but turns into a frozen cross. Yiddishkeit is not about intellect alone, but it's also about emotion. And it's also about action. And that the action needs to be enclosed with the emotion. And then you have the name of God. Then the name of God is complete. But if you only have intellect and deep, profound comprehension of God, but it's not brought down into speech and action, then God says, my name is incomplete. And similarly, the chair of God is incomplete. The throne of God is incomplete. The Aleph is missing. Aleph alludes to Alufay Shalolam, the master of the universe. For in the Aleph, we find a dot on the top, a dot on the bottom, and a line in between. The dot on top represents God, because God is indivisible. The dot on the bottom represents the letter Yud Ayi, the Jew. How does a Jew and God unite? Through the Vav, which is the Torah. And therefore Amalek does not want the Jew to unite with God. He wants the Jew to be severed from God. So therefore God says, I swear that my throne is incomplete and my name is incomplete as long as Amalek lives. And therefore, how do we destroy Amalek today? It doesn't mean we take a rifle or a hand grenade or a bomb or a nuclear warhead and go into the streets and search out Amalek and destroy Amalek. That's not the objective of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to destroy Amalek within ourselves, to destroy that coldness and that indifference to Yiddishkeit and to God, and to do a mitzvah with excitement, and to do a mitzvah with fervor, and to do a mitzvah with passion. Now, when did Amalek meet up with the Jewish people? Amalek met up with the Jewish people when they left Mitzrayim and they were on the way to receive the Torah. Because the objective and the novelty of Sinai was that the Torah now should be brought into action. Because the knowledge of the Torah was already known. Abraham studied the Torah, and Isaac studied the Torah, and Jacob studied the Torah. But what Amalek wanted to do was to sever the intellect from the action. So on the way to Sinai, when the Jews proclaimed God's unity, and they accepted upon themselves the Torah, Naaseh v'nishma, they said, we will do first, then we will understand. Amalek wanted to cut the Jews off on that path. So this is the message of the Parsha. This is the message of each one of us has the mitzvah, the obligation to destroy Amalek and to remember what Amalek wanted to do to us. And that is by the fact that when we do a mitzvah, to remember to do the mitzvah with excitement and to do the mitzvah with joy and to do the mitzvah like this is the very first time that we are fulfilling God's commandment. On the importance of following halacha and the importance of doing a mitzvah properly. There's a story that in the summer of 2004, a young couple, very excited, about to get married, came to Rabbi Chaim Mintz in Bel Air, California. And they told the rabbi, we would like you to officiate at our wedding. And the rabbi said to them, you know, before you get married, I just want to let you know that if for some reason you were married before, then you first need to receive a get. You have to get a get. And that way you sever the relationship between the previous spouse. And now you're able to get married and enter into a new world together with your spouse-to-be. They both shook their heads. Yes, we understand that. And they told the rabbi, we're planning the wedding in December. The rabbi looked at his calendar, said, okay, no problem, we'll do the wedding in December. Later, the Kala, the bride-to-be, calls up the rabbi and she says, you know, Rabbi, I got to tell you something that, you know, I did get married once. But the marriage was a blunder. There was nothing there, it was a mistake. And the courts annulled the marriage. And we got an annulment, and therefore you should know I don't talk to him anymore, it's over, so I'm just letting you know. The rabbi said, if that's the case, then we do need a get. According to Jewish law, your husband is obligated to give you a Jewish bill of divorce called a get. And again she argued, but you know, there was really no marriage there, it was over 1, 2, 3. He says, even for a moment, if you got married, you need a get to sever the previous relationship in order to get married again. And then the rabbi began to explain, you know, everything is divine providence. And everything's for a reason. And the idea of a marriage, a Jewish marriage and a chuppah, is to bring God into the marriage so that the marriage will be wholesome and blessed and everlasting. And you want to do it right. So let's first work on the get, and then we'll do the wedding. She was a bit disappointed, but she realized the rabbi was right, and she tracked down her husband, her ex-husband, and he came to the Beis Din. He gave her the get, and then the Beis Din told her, you know, now that you're divorced, you need to wait 3 months in order to get married. 3 months till I get married? That means I can't get married till the end of January. She called back the rabbi, Rabbi Mintz, you didn't tell me I have to wait 3 months after the get. He said, well, you never asked me, you know, but that's the halacha. The halacha is you have to wait 3 months. A woman needs to wait 3 months after she gets a get. So the couple said, look, we'll do it right. We're getting married only for one time, and it's going to be forever. We want God's blessing in the marriage. We're going to make sure that we do everything according to halacha, according to Jewish law. And so they planned the marriage for the end of January. However, the couple, you can imagine, was disappointed. And their disappointment lingered. That is, until the fateful day of December 26th, 2004. That was the day the tsunami struck. And this couple had plans to be on their honeymoon in the Maldive Islands. And surely they would have been swept away into the sea. And their dedication to halacha not only saved their marriage, but also saved their lives. And this is the message of the Parsha. And that is to restore God's name, to bring the Vav and the Hey, and connect it to the Yud and the Hey. And by doing so, we obliterate Amalek, and we make God's name once again complete. And this will be fulfilled very soon with the coming of Mashiach, as it says, on that day, Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shemo Echad, that God will be one and His name will be one.